Recently, Atlantis did a repop of the Aurora Prehistoric scenes Saber-toothed tiger. So this one is still factory sealed, and I'm going to leave it factory sealed for the time being. So I'm not going to actually build this kit. What I am going to build is in here. There are a couple of kits in here that some of which I'll try to show here. A number of these are going to need to get stripped because they've been pre-painted, like this tree shrub thing here, which I think may be the same one. No, I was going to say thought it might be the same one as the Cro-Magnon man, or sorry, the Neanderthal man, but actually I do think it may be a little bit different. Anyway, so lots of parts to strip, and I am going to try a new stripping product here, or a new product for this, and that is this Super Clean. I've never used this. This will be my first time. So we will find out all about it. So the process is going to be strip the parts, assembly. There's going to be dealing with seams. Let me see if I can find. And there are a lot of seams here to deal with. And part of the trick is going to be it's textured. It's got a fur. So that I am still trying to figure that out. I have some ideas. We'll see what happens here. Always a challenge. So again, this is our next project, and we'll see where it takes us. Stay tuned. One of the things that's part of my process is I will do a sketch. And I drew this guy here. Hopefully you can see that. Just to get an idea. And while this sketch has some issues, just not completely accurate, I was referencing, I've got a couple of samples or things I've pulled off the web. I believe this is a snow leopard here. I also looked at ocelots, like this one here. So I'm still, haven't painted anything yet, so I'm still where I could make changes. I did get some of these guys here. I'm going to call this one Snaggletooth because his tooth got snagged off. Apparently, the teeth on these guys were actually kind of fragile. So they probably developed a sense of when not to bite in certain ways. Anyway, so I will take one of these. I've got a third one too. I've got 3 of these guys here. I will take one of these guys and prime it, and then I will do a test run on my paint. For this one, I like the ocelot colors. It would be very easy just to go like what you would see on a puma or mountain lion, where they're mostly all one color. But I'd like to do something a little more patterned. So that's where we're at right now. And I am probably going to get started on assembly very soon. So one of the things about this saber-toothed tiger kit that I'm going to run into a problem with is not the assembly. The assembly is going to be pretty straightforward. The problem is these seams, gaps, and it seems to be there's a tendency on the edge of these seams that they almost kind of do this. When you think they'd come here and be straight, but they have a little rise to them, or at least so it seems. So I've had this idea that maybe what I will do is sand down or file down the edge so it creates a little trough. And that trough will receive the putty that I'm going to use. It's probably going to be the Vallejo plastic putty because it's water soluble. The other thing I'm going to try again, I've tried this with varying success on other kits, is to tape along the edges before I do assembly. And the reason to do that is to, when you're applying the putty, not to get it all over the place. Like you'd mask for painting. Very similar concept. So, fortunately, this kit comes with 8 legs. So I have plenty of chances to try it. I'm sure I will make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. The other problem is going to be the texture, because this is a textured kit. It's got fur. So there's going to be a challenge in not just having, once you sand it down or putty it, the trick is going to be not to have a bald spot. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to accomplish that yet. But my initial sense is that if I mask it off, then there's going to be less damage to whatever texture is there. That's the plan anyway. So we're going to see how this works out, and I will come back and let you know. I did another leg because I thought when I did this first one that maybe because the pin was broken, that this front part didn't align real well, and there may be some truth to that. But then on the second leg that I did, I am seeing that despite that, the seams still don't line up right. So that may take me off my original, because I did try, creating that little trough that I talked about previously for the putty to go in. And I am now thinking that may not work. So where I'm at now is I think I'm going to go back to traditional filing and then maybe puttying and doing the best I can not to damage texture. It may still end up with a bald spot. And that kind of reinforces my thoughts on how these, or what the audience that these kits were created for, which was kids. It seems to me that they're very much kind of build your own action figure kind of kits, because they have some level of articulation. So there may not have been as much concern about getting the seams. I mean, because it's like instead of meeting like this, they're meeting like this. Even when you get the pins put in the right place and everything clamped down, you're still ending up with a significant difference in the seam alignment. So I may not be able to accomplish the experiment that I originally intended to, but things happen. So I'm going to move on with this. I think I'm going to do all the other legs and just drive on as best as I can. While I'm waiting for the legs to set, and I've got a couple more after this set that I'm doing, I've got this problem to deal with, and that is the inside of the mouth. As you can see here, there's no roof of the mouth. Now, I've dealt with this on other kits like the Triceratops and the T-Rex that I've got there. So what I'm going to do is use milliput. I'm going to get the two parts here to make a roof of the mouth. So that's something I'm going to work on while the legs set. Preliminary work done on these, the roofs of the mouth on the saber-toothed tiger here, which they're not really tigers. They are cats, but they're not tigers per se. So that may be a bit of a misnomer. Anyway, so I used some milliput. I've got to let that dry, set, whatever you want to call it. And then I'll come back and do some more detail, maybe some filing. We'll see what needs to be done. But that's better than just having a big gape there. It occurred to me that I've got two bases, two nameplates, and a set of, or two sets of arms and legs. And it's like, I also happen to have two bodies. So why not go ahead and make a second one? Since I've got two bases, I have one on one base and one on the other. I have, with that in mind, I'm now prepping the second body, and I'll use half the legs on this one here, since there's two sets. And also, I got, let me show this to you here. This is some clear plastic rod. Now, you'll notice that this guy here is pouncing. And so there's one pouncing and one walking and another one kind of halfway. So I'm going to do these two poses here, and there's two different bases, and have them next to each other. So the rod, this clear rod, is for when he's pouncing, there's something for him to rest on. So I also got some paint brushes. Although toothbrushes could have worked, now that I think about it. But I've got some paint brushes that I'm going to use. I'm going to cut these off and use the bristles for whiskers. They're about the right color too. So we'll see how things turn out. So these guys are done. I'm going to show them to you one at a time. This is the walking one. And you can see this one's got whiskers. Like they all have whiskers. All right, and this is it with the base. And I'll show you the other one, which I'm particularly proud of. On its base, I've got a clear rod that's holding it up so it properly looks like it's jumping. Very pleased with that. And it also has whiskers. And I'm pretty pleased with the paint job. Not perfect, but pretty close to what I was going for. Let me see if I've got the reference here that I was using. I do recommend using going out and getting photographic references. So I was using this as a reference, and for the face is using this for a reference. Turned out pretty well. I'm pretty pleased. It doesn't completely match the pattern in my reference, but it looks like a big cat should. For the whiskers, it was a little bit of a trick. Used some bristles off of a paintbrush, and to get it so they weren't straight, I bent this down a bunch of times and then cut them off, and then used good old Zap-A-Gap, and so I would in one hand get, let's see if I can get it, here it is. So I'd take a bristle, dip it in the super glue or the Zap-A-Gap, hold it in one hand, and then hold this way back, and then use this Instaset, spray it on the model, and then put the whisker on, and that worked pretty good, and then trimmed them up. So I'm pretty pleased with that little step too. So this was a good build. Now this is, Atlantis has re-released this. So this is the re-release. And I do want to point out something in the instructions which were helpful, except there is one thing. It says that these are the leaping and that these are what they call raking. I'm going to call it the walking ones because that's what I used them for. It's actually the reverse. These are the leaping. This is the walking one or the raking one. So I don't know how that got by them, but it did. Anyway, fun build. I remember building this as a kid, and I will say that I'm a much better model builder now. So that's the end of this adventure. I think the next one I'm going to do, I suspect, is this guy here. This is also an Atlantis re-release. I've got some originals that I'm going to be working with. I will probably have some parts that I need to cast. I know the nameplate is not in my, wherever it is, in my set of originals, so I'm going to need to cast a nameplate. So I may be going over casting here. I'm going to be using some new materials for that. So thanks for joining me on this adventure, and we'll have more adventures soon. Thank you much.